What's up, guys? It's Tuesday. We're headed out for a session. I don't know where I'm playing at. Maybe multiple clubs. Let's get into this action.
I end up at the stomping grounds Spades Poker House. Buy in for $300, sit down at a new table, start the session off down $70 in small pots. Now in the cutoff, I look down at pocket fours. Under the gun opens to $15. Middle position calls. I'm in position over 75 big blinds deep and 2 opponents. We have all the correct elements to set mine, so calling is fine. But I've recently been studying and trying to make my game more linear, meaning I'm either raising or folding and rarely calling. This is not a move I use often with small pocket pairs. I decide here to 3-bet to $45. A majority of the time with a 3-bet in position, my opponents will check to me. And if I hit my set, it will be disguised. I will also have the option of checking back most of the time and taking a free turn. Now, the small blind cold calls $45, under the gun calls, and middle position calls. Not ideal. We are 4 ways to a flop that is King 8-4, all diamonds. All players check to me, and this time I hit my set on the flop. I have about a full pot size bet behind. Even with 3 diamonds on the board, I have plenty of equity, so I go all in, and fairly quickly all 3 opponents fold. This play is typically a tournament play, but maybe 5 to 10% of the time with deuces through sixes, I do this, allowing me to represent a stronger range. Here I am under the gun +2. There is a button straddle, small blind and big blind fold, and under the gun calls. I have pocket jiggities. With so many opponents to act behind me, I don't want to go multi-ways out of position. I size up to $45. I get the only woman at the table to call me without giving her my phone number. We are heads up to an unfavorable flop of King Queen 3 with 2 diamonds. With 3rd pair out of position and a decent sized pot, I check, and she checks back. The turn is the 2 of clubs. I could donk bet here, but what am I getting value from? A flush draw? Everything else I beat folds. In general, there are a lot of Queen X hands in her range also. If I bet and she calls, what's my plan for the river? I think we have to have a plan for the river. I check and she checks back again. The river is the 6 of diamonds, completing the flush, and diamonds are a woman's best friend. I check, but she checks back and shows Jack 6 of clubs. Might have given her a little more credit than needed, as I could have value bet this river for a small sizing with 3rd pair and probably got called, and for that reason we decided not to go on a second date. Speeding the camera footage up, we are under the gun now and peek down at 2 cowboys, pocket kings, and with no straddle, first act, I want some action, but not 3 or 4 players. I raise to $30. A fairly tight regular who hates money makes the call in the cutoff. Positive notes, it's heads up and we are at the very top of our range. The flop comes Ace 4-9 with 2 hearts. I'm not sure how that's possible. He holds a lot of Ace X combinations, so I elect to check with the plan to lead turn if he checks back, as I don't see him checking back very many aces that call my bet. He decides he doesn't want to check back and bets $50. This is not what we wanted to see. Finally, we get a strong hand and want to win a big pot, but poker is about discipline, and sometimes, guys, we have to let these hands go. I fold and show him how far behind he was. He rubs it in by showing us his hand and rolls over Ace King. Well played. As if we need to be reminded of how tough it was to fold King's last hand, we look down at Ace King offsuit in middle position with 1 limp. I raise to $25. Only 1 call from the small blind. We are heads up to a flop that is Queen Jack 8 rainbow, and the small blind checks. As the pre-flop aggressor, this board does favor our range, but our opponent's calling range in the small blind is full of hands that connect with this board. After some discussion with my coach, I think a small bet of $15 to $20 is best, but in this instance, I checked, and a 9 of clubs hits the turn. Now our opponent bets $25. Seeing how I check back flop, he can be betting all of his range here. I make a very loose call, and the river is the king of diamonds. Now he checks, which is weird. I check back, taking the showdown value, but before we can roll our hand, he says ace king is good, and then shows us pocket threes, saying he bet the turn for value. That is a soul read, and we should probably get up and leave now if we are that transparent. But rather than leave, I decide to play a hand of Omaha in the big blind and look down at ace 3-7 with one suit of clubs. There is 2 limps and a raise to $20. Now it's on me, and I repot for the max of $70. And the original raiser comes along. Heads up to a flop that is ace of diamonds, jack of hearts, 9 of hearts. And he checks. Only one thing to do here with top set in Omaha, and I bet pot of $150. He thinks for some time, saying he has bottom 2 pair, and soul reads us again with the fold. I then have to explain to him I am a vlogger and he is making us look bad on camera, so he leaves the table seeking higher stakes with tougher opponents. Feeling more comfortable with his absence, I look down at pocket 9s in middle position and open the action to $20. The button is the only caller, and we go heads up to a flop of king 5-3 with 2 diamonds. I like continuation betting here, as our opponent doesn't flop a pair or draw a decent portion of the time. I bet $35, but to our surprise, the button quickly calls. The queen of clubs on the turn is not a good card. Thinking about what I should do here, out of position, I count some chips out to see exactly what my stack size is in relation to the pot, but secretly I'm waiting for the Upswing Poker Lab app to load. Once it does, I realize this is a check with the plan to fold to any bet above 33% of the pot. Our opponent now quickly checks back. The river is the 6 of hearts. At this point, my hand has showdown value, so I check. He checks back, and he has no pair and missed his flush draw, so I take it down. A little while later, I'm in the big blind and look down at queen 4 of hearts. The poker gods send me a gift, and there are no raises. We are 3 ways to a flop of ace deuce 7 with 2 hearts. Flopping a flush draw, the gods send me a second gift, and I am truly blessed. The small blind checks, and I donk bet for $10. Since no one raised, betting here allows me to take this pot down right now. If I get called, I have tons of equity. Button folds, and the small blind calls. The turn is the 3 of hearts. I have received the favor of the divine poker lords, but I curse them as I check out of turn, and my opponent leads into me for $12. Calm down right now. I did not angle for a $25 pot. I actually thought he checked, and I was checking back. No need to raise, as I've made my flush and I'm in position and want my opponent to keep betting, so I call. Now the river is the 10 of diamonds, and the small blind leads out for $15. I look down at my watch that I don't have and realize it's time to raise, and I make it $45. At first I thought maybe I should have went bigger to be polarized, but then remembered this is 1-3 in Texas and no one is thinking about that, especially after it takes my opponent some time before making the call. He doesn't show and we win. Now we have a dealer change, and with that brings a double board PLO bomb pot. I'm going to speed through. I have 4-4 King Jack and have to stare at it extra long because too many cards confuse me. The top board is Queen Deuce 10 Rainbow, and bottom board is Deuce 8 Jack Rainbow. There is a $20 bet and I call. Heads up to a turn on the top, the ace of clubs giving us the nuts, and the bottom is a 4 of spades giving us a set. That's nice. I check and the opponent bets $30. As any good Samaritan would do, I check raise to $85 and he calls. On the river, the top is the 9 of clubs bringing in the flush and giving us the super 6 card straight. The bottom is another deuce and we make a full house. I decided on a check here. In hindsight, I actually should have bet this river, but he checks back and I scoop this nice little pot. This final hand, I am late to press the record button. I have King Queen of hearts and raise in late position to $25. I get 2 callers. The flop comes Queen 8-8 with 1 heart, and a player leads out for $10. I raise the 50 and he calls. Heads up to a turn that is the King of clubs. He now checks. He either has an 8 or I'm way ahead, so I check back. The river is an interesting ace of diamonds, and when he checks it over to me, I don't fear this player floated the flop with any ace X hands, so I'm pretty sure I have the best hand, and I want to target all of his king X or queen X or other pairs to call me. So I bet 30% pot, but that doesn't work and he folds. I head to the cashier with $560 for a nice $260 profit. Small session, only played for about 3 hours.